Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Collecting Prints, the podcast. It's great to have you here today, and we are excited to get started and have a little bit of fun in the process. My name is Brian Walton, a longtime collector. I lead the Walton Collection, which is a collection of memorabilia that spans from Harlem Renaissance to the present. I'm actually preparing for an exhibition in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley coming up soon. But beyond that, I am an avid prints collector, have been in the space for decades and communicate and work with collectors all over the world. And so today we are here to talk about the art of collecting, the music and memorabilia of Prince, one of the most iconic figures in music and entertainment that we've seen ever. Certainly, I would say the most prolific musician that we've seen, certainly in our generation, and maybe maybe ever. But what's interesting about today's show is that we're going to dive into a few album projects instead of focusing on one, because I want to make sure that we set the stage for the the eras of Prince that really where he unleashes more diversity, more power, and we start to see him really starting to be a force in the music industry and starting to, in a sense, take over the music industry in some ways, and we'll talk about that. But again, welcome to Collecting Prince the podcast. My name is Brian Walton. I am your host. For this segment, we have an opportunity to dive into what makes Prince collectible in the first place, and that's the fact that he was such a great icon of music. His catalog is massive, and that's just what we know that has been released. And so, so we know that he had a vault in Chanhassen at Paisley Park. And the estate is currently releasing some of those materials so that people get a chance to see what wasn't released and some of those things. And if you have followed Prince for some time, you know that he destroyed a lot of things if it wasn't perfect or if it wasn't something that he wanted to release. And so there are some things that we will, not hear and so forth. But we spend our time focusing on the huge catalog of music that he left us, but also the music that he left us and the artistry through related artists. The Prince group, so Vanity Six, Apollonia Six, The Time, The Family. There's so many others that have been influenced by the music and have worked with him, and so it's exciting to dive into it and see. So here on this show, we talk about the recordings. We talk about all the things that you can collect, from postcards, buttons, to posters, to store displays, to limited and rare in-house music. For example, items that were being produced inside Warner Brothers that may have never made it out, the Black Album, but also talking about things such as rare promotional materials that went to radio stations and record stores and all of that, and then shows that there was only one particular show of that particular kind. And so we'll talk about rarity and all of that, which is really scarcity and rarity and uniqueness is what makes a particular item more valuable than other things. But today we're going to talk a little bit more about collecting as the art of collecting and the fact that collectors, you have the opportunity to determine and decide what are you collecting for? I collect because I am a collector of Black culture and pop culture in the United States of America. And with that being said, Prince is one of the key icons, certainly that I resonated with his music coming of age during that time. And so it's an opportunity for me to not only preserve memory, but to preserve history and to advance history. We live in a time where actual history is not always celebrated. In fact, it's attacked and vilified as far as teaching history, specifically Black history. And so we are standing up and saying, no. We hold the history in ourselves and in our collections, and we will not be silenced. And we are going to share this information because the next generation needs to know not only the music, but what spurred the music and the power of the music to make change, to make the world the way we want it to be. And so I'm excited to be here today with you. So join us as we dive in and hopefully have a little bit of fun today. It's a Saturday. These shows, I do the podcast on Saturday mornings. And so just excited to dive into it and see. So I want to start with as we get into the projects. Why do we collect prints? Why do I collect prints? It's not just the records. It's not just the posters. It's not just the rare items that are sealed in plastic or framed, which, if you're a collector, you likely have some of that. But it's the story, it's the memory, and it's the cultural moment that is being captured. And so when we look at prints, and today's segment is focusing on 1979 through 1981, leading into 1982. And of course, that gets us into the 1999 album project. But we're not really going to talk that much about that. But those albums before, Prince in 1979, Dirty Mind in 1980, and Controversy in 1981, that's where we're going to focus our time today and talk about the music, the evolution, but also understanding what was taking place at the time. We as a country were still dabbling in a little bit of disco that was starting to fade a little bit and really go into more club music and club dance and house music. But we also had the advent of hip hop really taking the scene at that very time, that very moment. And so while we don't see so many influences of hip hop in the albums we're talking about today, it is clearly present in some of the things that we see in 1999, and certainly more prevalent, I would say, with Sign of the Times, and then later on in the 90s versions like the Symbol album in 1992. We start to see that Prince is not running away from a music that is not what he's produced, but you see him trying to find ways to embrace it, not only to stay relevant, but I think to make some noise with it, as he makes noise with everything else that he did. And so, very interesting time. So we can't separate the music from what was happening in the world. And so it's exciting for us to think about not only what we see in front of us, but what was taking place at that time that may have influenced the particular artifact or item that we're looking at. So, yes. So what's interesting? So now let's start looking at some items. Let's set the stage for what we're talking about and when we are talking about it. Um, so what I'll share is let's start with, so last week we got a chance to talk about For You, which was Prince's first album project. This is a promotional item, and there's a gold stamp. There's a gold stamped promo, and this was one that was sent to record stores and radio stations to promote the album project. Same as the official release, just usually unsealed and had the stamp there because it was just there to be played. It wasn't there to be, kept or anything like that. And a lot of promotional items get destroyed, which is why promotional items have so much value, because they don't really last too long. And so if you can grab those, that's important. But last week we started talking about the For You project by Prince, and now we are going to start bringing it slowly, bringing it up to present day as we go through a discography, so to speak, of what Prince was doing and producing at the time. And so we have three albums that we are going to focus on today and talk about some of the music on the album, some of what made that particular project unique, and also some of the things that Prince was doing at that time with the music. And so one of the first things we're going to start out with is we're going to start out with and pardon me, I keep everything sealed and in plastic just to preserve it, of course. And so what we have here is Prince, the album, 1979. And you can see that it has a promotional sticker there. And so anything that makes a release more interesting, more unique, is helpful. And so if you are collecting vinyl, for example, it's always great to see if you can get a sealed copy or a copy that is sealed and has hype stickers or promotional things attached, because it also tells the time and the time frame of when this took place. When I first started collecting, I would stay away from things that had price tags and so forth, but not so much now, because often price tags uh, have the date stamp, and it's just interesting to see the nostalgia of the price, because we won't return to cheap prices like that. We will not. So it's great to see. Uh, it's certainly great to see, what things sold for back in those days. So this is the 1979 album, Prince, and it does promote the song, the hit song, "I Want to Be Your Lover." And so we'll look at the discography. Here is a view of the back of that project. This is a gold stamp promo as well. This was stamped by the record company. And so you see it says promotional copy, not for sale. And so again, some promotional items are, are much more scarce, certainly in pristine condition, because they were often again sent to radio stations or record stores for them to use to really just open it, play it, promote it. And so if you can find promotional copies in pristine condition, you are really doing something special. But again, how you collect and what you collect is up to you. And sometimes we're collecting because of the nostalgia, or we want to collect a certain period, or we're collecting understanding that collections have value. And so the condition is a major factor in the value proposition. So let's look at some of the items that were on this particular album. Some of the songs, "I Want to Be Your Lover," which was a hit, "Why You Want to Treat Me So Bad," which was not a hit yet, but we know that becomes a hit later on. "Sexy Dancer," "When We're Dancing Close and Slow," "With You," "Bambi," "Still Waiting." And "Still Waiting" was covered by another artist that Prince supported, and Margie Cox, and I'm actually, I think I have one, but I'm looking for another copy of "Still Waiting" on a 12-inch single. Then we have "I Feel for You," which we know Shaka Khan covered and took it to new heights, especially with the advent of one of the first hip hop verse in an R&B song, to our knowledge, that was intentional. And then it says "It's Gonna Be Lonely" is the last track there. And so we get a chance to see this project and know that he was breaking ground, if not more so for his uniqueness, his look, his style, but also for the fact that when we talk about the songs that are on this album and other people covering him, we start to see how he is being embraced, maybe even more so as a songwriter than as a performer, even at this time, even though this is when we start to see him come out of his shell. Well, was he ever in a shell? But come out of the shell and start to really show being flamboyant, being daring, and being different on stage. But he is making waves behind the scenes right now at this time period, because people are recognizing how well or how great of a writer he is. And so, and during this period, there are quite a few people that were covering his music that he was writing for, and that helped solidify him in the music industry. And so the next album is a definite direct statement of what would be to come for not only the next few years, but really part of his persona, at least into the 2000s, when he got a little bit more centered and a little bit more mindful of what his music inspired in other people, and the type of legacy he wanted to leave. And as far as maturing through music. So the next one, this is the Dirty Mind LP. So this is the Dirty Mind LP. And so here are the songs that were on that one. And so you get a chance to see the strong rock influences. The funk is there. And so you also see some really good writing that's taking place on this project. And so yeah, so 1980, there were quite a few people, that were still, everyone's still captured by disco. And so there were songs that had some of a disco feel, but it was really diving more into the rock and funk that we know, or really, think of if we look at his career long term. And so we have that. And last but not least, in 1981, he releases a song on an LP with a title that really defines the majority of his career, and that is 1981's Controversy. This is a copy that is still sealed from 1981, which certainly increases the value of it, but also the nostalgia because um, if you are not from that era, it's hard to explain what it feels like to open the LP that you have been hearing songs on the radio and you want to tear into it and see what the entire project sounds like. Just being able to tear that cellophane or that shrink wrap and get to the album was just a part of the experience. But this one is still sealed, 1981 Controversy album, and so we get a chance to see him really diving into attacking issues, which we see go through the Sign of the Times LP. In fact, the title track "Sign of the Times" is really a statement and a um, and really a call to action about what's taking place in the world and that we need to do better and focus on the right things, which is timeless because with everything that we see going on in the world and in our country, it's wise and prudent to focus on what's most important, which is first of all your health, your physical and mental health. What are you attempting to achieve, and your family and friends in supporting that, and while dealing with or while celebrating or protesting what's taking place larger, but what's really important, how are you developing as a human? But all of those things are being surfaced, and so we get a chance to see. I want to make sure that the glare from the shrink wrap doesn't take away from it. But we have the title tracks here. Well, we have the tracks here, and we see "Do Me Baby," which was also covered, um, by Melissa Morgan, and you'll hear different excerpts or pieces of it throughout popular music. The "Let's Work" was a huge hit for Prince as well. And "Controversy," of course, the title track was a big hit for Prince. And this is again a sealed retail copy from 1981 of Controversy. And Controversy would be his part of his moniker forever. But as we look back at it and we say that, wow, what he was doing then was controversial, and it was. But compared to the way things are now, we almost want to harken back to the conservativeness of Prince at that time, considering some of the things that we see in on television and in music these days. And so, but he broke ground on talking about issues that were issues that everyone in the country was dealing with. So, um, a great project for that. So, as we look at those three projects, one of the things that we have to remember is that Prince at this time, so Prince was 19 when the For You album was released. So he's late 19, early 20s when these the second, third, and fourth album are released. And what's unique about him is that if you don't know his status at this time, it's easy to figure that, oh, he was a kid on the scene trying to cut his teeth into music and make it, and he was. But he already had an incredible amount of respect from the music industry in the sense that he was one of the few people, especially at that age. And we have to take into account that he's a young African American male communicating with the larger music industry at that time. And of course, the music industry is about making money, what they see as profitable. And so the music industry, in many respects, as we look around, there are things that they do to not take chances. And so if they feel that they're risking their money, they won't go down that road. And so Prince was iconic in the sense that at that age, he had complete creative control, that later on he would fight Warner Brothers for, to have more, to have control over his actual music product. But at this time, he was given more access at that age than anyone we had certainly seen at that time ever. And so it wasn't about anything other than he was that good at music, that they saw that, and he didn't have to use the producers that Warner Brothers had on the roster. And at that time, Warner Brothers had the top artists, the top producers, and everything. And so Prince could have had his pick. But Prince had a vision. He had an idea for what he wanted in the sound. He was working on the limb drum machine, and he was on the edge, cutting edge of technology in music. Um, and so we can look back and hear some of those first four albums, and the beats sound a little bit programmy, a little bit, where's the depth to it? But that was cutting edge technology at the time that other people weren't using. And then the hip hop would certainly explode the use of that. But Prince was one of the earliest people using, um, in a sense, programmed music instead of live music, and using the technology of the keyboards and the drum machines that was just coming out, and use that to his advantage before anybody else was using it. There's a story about Rick James possibly stealing his drum machine and then using it to produce a song, but allegedly. Uh, but what's interesting is that Prince at that time was given so much freedom to be able to do what he did. And from that freedom, we got those albums and those projects. What's interesting, again, is that he was breaking ground as a very young person in a music industry that again is about making money. And so the fact that Warner Brothers took the chance on him is rather unique, and that gave him the platform to do the things that we know later on throughout his career that he would do, and really be one of the best to have ever done it. So if you're a collector, there are things that you need to think about, even with these projects. One of the first things to think about is, why are you collecting? Are you collecting because it brings back memories of the time, which it does? From all of these possibilities for collecting are all true for me. That it's about the memory, that it's about um, actually being able to listen to a time that is nice to go back to at times, not only just to remember, but also remember all the things that were happening at the time, being coming of age, and what we as individuals, what I was going through at the time, and thinking back to all of that is also very interesting. But also understanding that this is collecting the popular culture in the United States at that time, but also um, really looking at how Prince affected music, affected fashion, affected other genres of music, affected other artists. And we would be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the other groups that he was producing and bringing to light at this time. Vanity Six was out there. And so we're talking about putting that group together and then taking them out on tour. The time and the time hit, and struck a different chord than what Prince's music was doing at the time, because the time really has always been the funk outlet for Prince. So the music that he was writing and providing to the time, and of course we know Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis in there, Jesse Johnson, rest in peace, Jelly Bean Johnson, Monte Moire. I mean, come on, And I got to give credit to St. Paul, but more so he's known for the family, which is coming about, a little bit later. And so there were just powerhouses in the group, and we can't forget frontman Morris Day. And so Prince was doing so much at one time. It's almost amazing to believe that he is writing the music for other groups. He is getting them recorded, making the decisions about tour, wardrobe, and all of that. But he has to do it for himself, for his larger releases, and he's trying to make a name for himself. And so it's amazing to think what was taking place and what he did not have his hands in, as far as the Prince realm at that time. He had his hand in everything, and so that's something we'll see throughout his career. And the '80s is really the start of some of the best collectible items. Last week, we had the opportunity to look at the For You project, and certainly it was timely for them at that time to have a promotional book cover, promotional poster for people to hang up in their rooms. But there were also other promotional items that were developed that were interesting, and record companies started to say, "Hey, we are going to create some items around this artist and this music that are not we're not going to make it for the entire general public. Maybe we're going to make this to really provide some swag to record store owners who really drive the sales as well as radio, and then later on the internet and television. But really, radio is what drove the sales. The record store owners, your point of sale is critical, and whether product gets moved. So it being featured, it being played while people in the store is massive. And so record companies recognize that we need to not only market to the general public, we need to market to those people and provide them with things that other people don't have so that they're happy and they talk about the project. So the 1980s is really where, and I would say mid to late is where you start to see an increase in promotional items, promotional materials from the record company, because they're thinking about all the different forms of media. For example, we have the CDs here, but cassettes, 8-track tapes. Um, if you don't know what that is, please look that up. Uh, but all the different forms of media, whether vinyl, and then we would get, laser discs. Prior to that, we had video discs, and we had several other forms of media. There was the DCC, the digital compact, that came out. Not too many of those made of many projects. I know that I have a Mariah Carey, and I believe Whitney Houston, of an MCC disc. But there are different things that were produced and tried out because they didn't know what was going to hit. You had video, of course, so we had the beta, and so Purple Rain. I have Purple Rain on a beta cassette. If you don't know what a beta cassette is, please look it up. But also VHS cassettes. And Beta and VHS were available at Blockbuster, Arrows Video, and other video chains across the country for people to rent and all of that. And that takes me back quite a bit because that's something altogether that was interesting around the life at that time. But as a collector, you will need to decide what forms of media you're collecting. And that is, are you collecting vinyl only? I know quite a few people. I got to shout out uh, Dan Sheldon. I got to shout out Adam Lewis. They're collectors that I know that focus a lot on the vinyl. And then, are you collecting, 12 inches, 7 inches, the 45s? Are you collecting albums? And then we start to talk about, are you collecting cassettes? Whether, all the different types of cassette media. We know that maxi single cassettes are probably the most scarce, most rare, because they often have versions of the music that you would not see on certainly a cassette single or even the album project. But also, we know it's the likelihood of those being produced or reproduced or reissued is extremely slim, and so that makes them a much more rare form of media. So maxi cassettes, maxi cassettes. Um, even if it says a maxi cassette single, that means there's likely some other alternate version, alternate take that's on there that makes it a little bit more rare to have. And of course, any item that is sealed, or if it's promotional, or if it has promotional packaging or material around it, all of those things make it a little bit special. But we got a chance to look at the three albums that we're talking about on this segment today, and and really start to think about how is Prince changing as an artist, but also what was going on in the world at that time. Again, he was at this time he was the whole country was entrenched in the disco era, but that was starting to fade. We had the advent of hip hop music really coming of age. And pop music had a strong rock alternative feel. We had the 80s rock with the strong ballads and the huge guitar and drum solos. And you can see that play itself out from Prince in different ways, and in different songs at that particular time. I am excited to be a collector that is attempting to help other collectors get their collection together, whether you are just starting a Prince or related artist collection, or if you have been in the space for a long time. What's interesting is that, did I do that to show the 1999? Anyway, 1999, that will be the next album that we look at. But um, Wherever you are in the collecting process, there are things that we are going to provide throughout this podcast for you to learn and opportunities for you to share. And so we'll look at ways you could do that, because in the future we will have I will bring some guests through the podcast that are collectors or that were related to the Prince world in some way, just to give you some insights and maybe help you make some decisions about your collection and what you want to do. But as always, thank you so much for joining me on Collecting Prince, the podcast. My name is Brian Walton, your host and an avid collector as well. Thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a wonderful day.